You need to be buying Matthew Golden and Xavier Worthy in your Dynasty leagues, and we'll tell you why next.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. He is the Fantasy Football Hall of Famer, Michael Fabiano. And on today's show, we're taking a look at 5 wide receivers that you don't want to miss out on in your Dynasty leagues. We'll talk about Luther Burden's upside. We'll talk about a couple rookies that Fabs and I are both really excited about. But Fabs, I want to start with 2 former Texas speedsters. And let's start with Matthew Golden, because everything is setting up for Matthew Golden to have a monster sophomore season. Right now, he is being drafted around wide receiver 52 in startup drafts, 109th overall. Why should you be buying Matthew Golden?
There's no reason not to at that price. 52. I mean, his ADP is 109. And you and I both agreed last year. We didn't think Matthew Golden was going to do anything as a rookie. And I don't think he's going to be some elite player. He's not going to turn into Devontae Adams or Donald Driver or, whatever great Packers wide receiver you want to put
Jordy
in there.
Nelson.
Exactly. Right. But I think it could be valuable in fantasy where he's a wide receiver 3 flex starter type. And everything broke right for him this offseason. Okay. So let's go back. Obviously, former first round pick. Green Bay lost Romeo Doubs as a free agent. They traded away Dontavian Wicks. That's 131 targets that are going to be available. All right. And I think he's probably going to end up playing like that X receiver role. And that's going to make him again, he's a different player than Romeo Doubs, but maybe play that Romeo Doubs sort of role in terms of the target share. Do I think he's going to lead the Packers in targets? Probably not. I think that would probably be Christian Watson. Jaden Reed is also in the mix, but Golden only played up 450 offensive snaps last year. He only had 44 targets. That's just 3.1 targets per game. And if he is going to be playing that X receiver role, that means what? He's going to be on the field in 2 receiver sets. He's going to be on the field far more often than he was last year. Obviously, the Packers liked him. They drafted him in the first round in 25. And we've even seen, the Packers offensive coordinator, Adam Stenavich, come out and say that he thinks that Golden's made some really good improvements. He's made some strides during the offseason. So everything points to Golden being a potential sleeper. And based on his age and based on the projected increase in volume, Marcus, I see wide receiver 52, and I'm like, I don't get it.
Here's the other part of it that I keep coming back to. I'm not even a huge believer in the talent for Matthew Golden. I'm just not. I think this Packers offense is going to be good because it's generally pretty good with Matt LaFleur and Jordan Love. I don't trust Christian Watson to stay healthy at all. I just don't.
Yeah.
And Jaden Reed had multiple injuries last year. Now, I do trust him to stay healthier because he just has a better track record. But you just never know what a player's going to look like after so many injuries like Jaden Reed had last year. They've also talked about condensing the target share down. And I think Matt LaFleur found out last year, when you've got 5 receivers who all think they should be the number 1 receiver on a team, it's really hard to keep everybody happy. You're better off having a clear pecking order of how these targets should go. It also helps these guys get into a rhythm, right? Like if you're the number 4 receiver and you think you should be getting 7 or 8 targets a game and you're only getting 2, it's really hard to have any kind of consistency. So I do think reducing it down to just Watson, Reed, and Golden will help. It's just, can Golden be better than Reed or Watson when all 3 of them are on the field together? I don't know. But at that price tag, wide receiver 52, a former first-round pick, I'm willing to find out.
I mean, talk about some of the wide receivers that are ranked even 10 spots ahead of him. Michael Pittman, Cortland Sutton, Mike Evans is going to be 33. Chris Godwin, Jacoby Myers is 29. We know what Jacoby Myers is. It befuddles me that he is that low. And that's why he's a player that at that price, I definitely want to get on board with, because there's upside there. And again, he's not going to be the next great Packers wide receiver. In fact, I'd much rather have Christian Watson, although there are some injury issues. I just think he's a better potential fantasy asset. But as the maybe number 2 option at wide receiver for Jordan Love, I will take Matthew Golden where his ADP is right now all day long and twice on Sundays.
So let's talk about the player that's being drafted directly behind him. And I just think it's so funny. Xavier Worthy, wide receiver 53, another former Texas receiver who ran in the 4.2s at the NFL Combine. It's just so hard to know what to make of last year for Xavier Worthy because he was phenomenal in the second half of the 2024 season. He was great in the playoffs. We mention all the time how good he was in that Super Bowl. He gets hurt on the 3rd play of the regular season. He runs into Travis Kelce. He suffers a severe dislocation of his shoulder. I think it's a labrum injury as well. And Andy Reid has come out this offseason and said, yeah, they had to really protect Worthy from himself. They didn't run certain routes that they knew might get him in trouble a little bit. So is he closer to the player that we saw at the end of the 2024 season? Or is he more what we saw for the majority of the 2025 season? Again, I don't know. But given all of the uncertainty in this Kansas City offense, I'm willing to find out.
At wide receiver 53 with an ADP of 110, 100%, no doubt about it. And, I think you hit the nail on the head. He just wasn't healthy last year. The shoulder was an issue. I believe he also had an ankle. So he is really kind of primed for a bounce back year. If we look back and compare to what he did in the second half of his rookie year. And as you mentioned, the Super Bowl, one of the greatest statistical performances of any wide receiver in the big game. And also Rashee Rice is a problem child. And Rashee Rice is under contract this year, but will the Chiefs extend him? I don't think they're ready to do that. In case you haven't heard, I believe it was Adam Schefter who had tweeted out that the Chiefs are not planning on doing that because they don't know what they're going to be investing in. Because again, he's got problems off the field. Right now, Rashee Rice is in jail coming off of knee surgery. And I also feel like, one of the more underrated, I think, aspects of this is that Worthy, I believe, under Chad O'Shea is going to end up hopefully running a more diverse sort of route tree, improving himself, because, we don't talk about that kind of thing too much. I know Matt Harmon does a great job of that stuff on reception perception over at Yahoo. Ultimately, sometimes it's getting a little bit too deep in the weeds, but these players every single year are looking to improve, at least they should be. And so what we've seen from Worthy in his first 2 years, and I would argue that it's less than 2 years because he wasn't healthy in 2025, I think we're going to see some improvements there. And if the Chiefs decide that they are out of the Rashee Rice game and they want nothing to do with this kid after 2026 because he's just too much of a problem, Travis Kelce is going to probably be gone in 27. He'll likely retire. I don't know for sure, but I would just guess.
Yeah.
There's a big role out there potentially for Xavier Worthy in the future.
The other part of this that we should mention is teams tell us a lot in the offseason by which free agents they sign and how they draft. The Chiefs had all these picks inside the top 100. They had pick 9, which they traded up to pick 6 to draft Mansour Delane. They selected Peter Woods at the end of the first round. They had a top of the second round pick. They selected R. Mason Thomas. They had free agent money that they spent on Kenneth Walker. They did not address wide receiver at all, knowing
what
Rashee Rice is and going into a contract year, which makes me think there is a possibility that they just really believe in Xavier Worthy. And again, I think they should. We saw it in the second half of 2024. There were games where he was getting double-digit targets and multiple carries in a game. We saw that first game against Baltimore, scored 2 touchdowns. There were several times in the back half of that season where I'm thinking of a play off the top of my head where he created this big pass interference call down the field, put him at the 1-yard line, and Kansas City scored in the next play. Maybe they just believe that they kind of have an ace up their sleeve in Xavier Worthy, and they really didn't need to draft anybody. It's just that it was really unfortunate that the injury that he had last year, again, we're trying to tell a story of why Xavier Worthy could outperform his ADP. But for me, at wide receiver 53, I'm willing to take the chance that he was just so banged up last year. And if it doesn't click, it doesn't click. But he's also incredibly young. He's 23 years old in an offense that we think should be more explosive, with Eric Bieniemy now running it, with, I think, Andy Reid needing to be a little bit more creative. I want Xavier Worthy on my team because I don't want to miss out on the possibility of him being a star in year 3.
And the cost is extremely reasonable to the point where he could end up being a bargain.
Yes.
At that age, in that offense, catching passes from Patrick Mahomes. And I get it. He's coming off the ACL. We did see Mahomes throwing, which we all saw that on social media. At least I'm guessing most of us did. And maybe in the beginning of the year, Worthy's numbers are somewhat up and down as Mahomes gets comfortable after the ACL repair, but we're talking long-term here. And I think Xavier Worthy is a more solidified part of the Chiefs' future than certainly Rashee Rice because of Rice's off-field issues.
All right, so let's talk about some other rookie receivers that you need to be drafting for your dynasty teams this offseason. We'll get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Workplace chaos, deadline stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position that you have to fill is still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed sponsored jobs help you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for: skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping that the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute that I've been talking to you, companies like yours have already made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium status that it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Get your daily Dynasty fix completely ad-free by joining the Everydayer Club today. Start your 7-day free trial right now and get closer to your team without the interruptions. Click the link in the show notes or go to lockedondynasty.supercast.com to claim your free trial. All right, Fabs, let's talk about some rookies that we are excited about, that we don't want to miss out on this offseason. Who do you got?
I'm going to go with Dazon Stribling, currently wide receiver 62 with an ADP in the 140s. Now, he's a little bit older than a typical rookie coming out of college. He's 23. He'll be 24 in December. But the Niners drafted him over Denzel Boston. They certainly like him. They think that he could end up being a big part of this receiving group in the future. And let's just be honest. The 49ers on offense are old. Mike Evans, who I love, who's going to go to the Hall of Fame, he's going to be 33 in August. And he missed some time last year with injuries. Ricky Pearsall has got talent, but he can't show it if you're not on the field. He's been very injury prone. Christian Kirk is going to be 30 in November. He's a slot guy, not going to be a player who's going to see an enormous amount of targets. And then behind them, it's Demarcus Robinson. And really, that's it. Then when you also factor in that George Kittle, and I would think, I'm not a doctor, but I would think he probably starts the season on the PUP list. Although, I don't know if you saw it, but he had posted some stuff on social media suggesting that he thinks he could be ready for week 1. Unless the medical world has created some sort of adamantium type solution and injected it into his Achilles, I have never seen a player come back from an Achilles. He was hurt in the playoffs last season. Remember,
even if he feels like he's ready, I have to believe the 49ers are going to err on the side of caution. Like they're going to need him in September, but they really need him for January, right? So like, let him take the first month of the season off to continue rehabbing. There's no reason to put him on the field really any sooner than that.
I mean, at least though, Marcus, right? At least a month.
Yes. Now, I don't know how much that's going to affect Stribling,
Well,
but
it's
I
just
think
targets.
and that's what it is I think there is a path to him getting a lot of targets early on in the season.
Right, exactly. You've got older players at wide receiver, and when you don't have an older player, you've got an injury-prone player. Stribling, obviously, if you watched him in college, he's predominantly an outside receiver. Last year, 81% of his routes came out on the perimeter. There is a path and a world where Zon Stribling is playing maybe not a prominent role in San Francisco as a rookie, but maybe projected to see a little bit more work than we would expect based on the depth chart. And again, we're in the long game here in Dynasty. Who's to say that Stribling isn't a starter for this team next year, as soon as 27? I think that's certainly within the realm of possibility, considering what's ahead of him on the depth chart.
I look at somebody like Jennings, who they've had the last however many years. Whenever he's been forced into a bigger role, he's always been super fantasy relevant. The only issue with Jennings is that he's never been fast. So they've always had to put him in the slot to get him those targets. But they loved having him on the field because he was their best blocking receiver. Stribling was widely considered the best blocking receiver in the class, but he also has 4.3 speed. So you feel like you can leave him on the outside. And I also think the 49ers got a lot of pushback for taking Stribling at pick 33, considering where he was at on the consensus board. And not that that really matters, but I do wonder if you're going to see Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, try to show the rest of the league why they were wrong on this player, right? And I think getting him on the field, showing what he can do early in the season would maybe help there. And again, you don't want to think that NFL coaches care about that kind of stuff, but they do.
They're human beings, man.
They're human beings.
Ego.
And I think he is a really, really good value. And again, in an offense that we think is going to put up a ton of points because that's what Kyle Shanahan does.
What if Mike Evans decides, you know what? This is it for me. I've played in 2026. I'm going to the Hall of Fame. Yeah, he's going to be
Very
34
possible.
next August in 2027. He may decide 1 year in San Francisco is enough. I think I'm done. And that could potentially even elevate Stribling even quicker. So there's a lot of good things. And I understand that, we're trying to play the game here of what if, but a lot of it in Dynasty is what we have to do is play that what if game. And you've got a 33-year-old wide receiver. You've got an injury-prone wide receiver. You've got a 30-year-old slot guy who's not long-term in terms of contract with the 49ers. You've got a tight end coming off a major Achilles injury. There's opportunities for Stribling.
One other rookie that I wanted to mention is Casey Concepcion. And I've been trying to draft him in every single May rookie draft that I've been doing.
Okay, stuck that in there.
And partially it's because I just like him the best in that range of like 106 to 108. Generally, the top receivers, Carnell Tate, Jordan Tyson, Mekhi Lemon are all gone. And I just like Casey Concepcion, but I also really like the situation. I think he can be the clear target getter in this offense right away. Todd Monken has an unbelievable track record of getting offenses to play at their fullest potential. He turned Zay Flowers into a multi-time Pro Bowl receiver who had 1,200 yards last year. I think Concepcion was a better prospect than Zay Flowers coming out of Boston College. If nothing else, they're very similar. Now, the quarterback situation is what it is, but in Dynasty, you're drafting these guys for not just this year, but for the majority of their careers. And I think we believe that the Browns are going to have a new quarterback in 2027, likely a high first-round pick. But if Deshaun Watson or Shedeur Sanders can be competent enough to get Casey Concepcion the football, I don't see why he can't be a guy that gets 75 receptions right away, because I think it's going to be a lot of screens and mesh and just underneath routes where they're just peppering him with the football.
Why can't he be the most targeted wide receiver in Cleveland in year one? Or at worst, the second most behind Jerry Jeudy, who you all know I'm not a big fan of in fantasy. There's no reason why. And it's funny too, because, you go on to social media and you see some of the videos, some of the beat reporters, and there was a few videos of Deshaun Watson throwing the football to Casey Concepcion, and in fantasy, we're like, yes, that's what we want. And Deshaun Watson is going to be the starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. And I actually think that's a good thing for their offensive skill position players.
It seems like we are trending that way. Honestly, I don't know that it matters too much for Concepcion. I think most of what he's going to be doing is underneath. There is a little bit of a vertical element to his game. And I think Watson, at least he has the track record of being a good vertical passer. If you think back to his days when he had Will Fuller. By the way, Deshaun Watson's career has really never been the same since
Will Fuller.
Well,
wow, that's a nice blast from the past, man.
If you get a chance, go look at Deshaun Watson's career splits when he's playing with Will Fuller and when he's not playing with Will Fuller. And you're going to be shocked at how different he is. You know what it reminds me a little bit of? It's kind of like a current Texans quarterback with and without Tank Dell. When Stroud doesn't have Tank Dell, he's just not the same quarterback. But I want Casey Concepcion because I think he's going to have a monster rookie season, and I don't want to miss out.
I am right on board with you, and based on his ADP, I will pay that price gladly.
All right, let's talk about one more receiver. And of all the receivers we're going to mention, he's the one I want on every single team because I just don't want to miss out on a potential breakout season, and that's Luther Burden. We'll get to him next. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We are discussing 5 wide receivers that we don't want to miss out on in our Dynasty leagues. And our final one here is Luther Burden, who I absolutely adore. I loved him coming out of Missouri. I thought he was really dynamic as a rookie. You look at all the advanced stats, the yards per route run, what he can do after the catch. He's phenomenal. He's being drafted at wide receiver 23. He was actually a little bit higher than that at points this offseason. But I believe I have him in just about every single Dynasty league right now. And I know I'm being irrational. I know he's probably not going to be a top 10 fantasy receiver. But I think it's possible. So that's why I want him in every league.
Hard not to like him. It really is. Considering the situation, DJ Moore was traded to Buffalo. It's a Ben Johnson offense. Listen, don't compare him to Amon-Ra St. Brown because he's not going to be, but still. He has put himself, and the Bears have put him in a tremendous position. And we did start to see some flashes at the end of last season where Luther Burden looked like he could be a guy who breaks out this season and becomes a big part of not only the Bears offense, but fantasy football lineups for a long time. I will say this. Did you notice that Rome Odunze jumped him again? Initially, Odunze was higher than Burden. And, we're going back to several months. And then Burden jumped ahead of him. And now Odunze is at 20 and Burden's at 23. And I have a hard time separating the two in terms of value because I was on Odunze last season. And after the first month of the year, I looked like a genius. And then it all went to hell in a handbasket. But the talent is still there. The potential is still there. He's a young player at 23 years old. And so if I can't get Burden, or maybe you just prefer Odunze, I honestly think it's a dart throw. But both players have big time breakout ability this year, and they're going to play huge roles in what should be a very fantasy friendly offense when you add in Colston Loveland into that mix. I've said it before. I'll say it again. The Bears are a Super Bowl contender, and they are going to have a very fun offense to watch with all the pups, the young pups that they have playing prominent roles.
And just everything lines up for Burden to have a monster season. Not only is he going into year 2, which has kind of been historically the year that these receivers break out, he's going into year 2 with Ben Johnson, who I think we're going to see the biggest leap in Chicago's offense in year 2. Once Ben Johnson has had time to implement his system, Caleb Williams is going into year 3 now. I think we saw him get better and better as the year's going on. There's no DJ Moore to take away targets. Yes, Rome Odunze and Colston Loveland are both going to be big factors, but I just think it's going to be really easy for Ben Johnson to get the football to Luther Burden. And this is what we saw last year. Screens, design handoffs, mesh routes, underneath, just ways to get him the ball where he can be creative. We call them layup throws in football. Like, hey, just give this guy a touch near the line of scrimmage and let him do the work. I think one thing that Ben Johnson's going to want to do is take some of the stress and pressure away from Caleb Williams. And the way you do that is by just giving the ball to your playmakers, near the line of scrimmage. And that's why I could just see Luther Burden having several of these games of like, hey, it's 11 touches for 110 yards and a touchdown. And that's how he becomes a top, 20 fantasy receiver this year.
I'm going to play a little game of Would You Rather with Marcus Mosher right now. I don't have my big stick mic, like Bob Barker used to have on The Price is Right. But I'm going to give you some names of wide receivers who are currently higher than Luther Burden, and in some cases significantly higher than Luther Burden. And I want to know who Marcus Mosher would rather take. So let's start off with Jordan Tyson. Would you rather have Tyson or Luther Burden?
Tyson.
Okay. Roma Dunze, I know who you're going to say here. He is wide receiver 20 right now. You would rather have Burden, correct?
Pretty easily, yes.
A.J. Brown, soon to be a New England Patriot at wide receiver 21, or Luther Burden?
Burden. I'm a little bit nervous about what A.J. Brown might look like a year from now. He's had a couple knee injuries. Going to be switching teams. This will be his third team in 5 seasons. I'll take Burden.
This one surprises me a little bit. Brian Thomas Jr. Or Luther Burden?
Easily. I just don't know if there's a role for Brian Thomas in this offense.
BTJ is, it's percentage points ahead of Luther Burden, but right now being drafted higher than Luther Burden on Dynasty League football. Zay Flowers or Luther Burden?
Probably Flowers, but it's close.
All right. Devontae Smith or Luther Burden?
Smith.
Okay. All right. So then based on what you're telling me, Burden's probably 4 spots higher in your mind than he is based on ADP. So that would put him at like wide receiver 20-ish.
Yeah. And to me, honestly, that feels about right. I think the issue is when he was being drafted at like wide receiver 15, wide receiver 16, it's not that I was shying away from that, but it's going to be really hard for him to return that kind of value, because I think if he breaks out, that's probably the ceiling. Wide receiver 15, wide receiver 16. I think wide receiver 20 is just a little bit easier of an entry point. That's all.
One more. Luther Burden or Rashee Rice?
If you would have asked me,
that you're hesitating.
Well,
a lot.
I think if you would have asked me a month ago, I would have said Rashee Rice. But I think now I'm going Luther Burden.
Oh, so what you're saying is that it was different a month ago, and since now you've had more time and the situation has presented itself to be what it is, you've made a different choice. Understood.
Luckily, I'm not doing any startup drafts in May there, Fabs.
I know. I'm messing with you.
That's all right. All right. That is it for today's show. We'd like to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty your first listen every single day. Make sure you subscribe and follow the podcast so you get all of the latest episodes. On tomorrow's show, we're going to talk about some tight ends that we don't want to miss out on our Dynasty leagues. And on Monday, we're going to do some of the biggest OTA winners and losers from the last 2 weeks. So make sure you tune in for that. And if you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Dynasty ad-free, plus members-only Discord access, and so much more. Head over to lockedondynasty.supercast.com to join the club. And for those of you on video, we can send you the first ever 24/7 national NBA YouTube channel. And on audio, make your second listen the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. Follow Fabs on Twitter at Michael_Fabiano. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.